All right, get ready because today we are going deep on a story. It's uh, pretty intriguing and kind of unsettling, honestly. We're going to be talking UFOs and possible government cover-ups and even Men in Black.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Men in Black. We'll be breaking down a first-hand account from a 2016 episode of the online radio show, Third Phase of Moon. A caller named Ron shared his experience,
Okay.
and he claimed to have seen a UFO while he was serving in the Coast Guard back in the early 70s.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us. Personal accounts can be compelling, but they also, require careful consideration.
Absolutely. Ron's story starts pretty typically with a UFO sighting off the coast of North Carolina,
Oh, okay.
near the Bermuda Triangle, no less.
Yeah.
But then it takes a turn. It gets really strange with claims of the government intimidating him and a run-in with the infamous Men in Black.
The Bermuda Triangle. That right there already, just that location adds a layer of intrigue, doesn't it? A place, it's known for, unexplained things happening and strange phenomena.
It definitely does. It sets the stage for, for one wild ride. Let's hear Ron's account in his own words. This is a clip from that 2016 episode of Third Phase of Moon where he describes what he saw,
Oh,
that UFO.
got it.
Wow, his description of the UFO is pretty vivid. Iridescent, changing colors, bright lights, even what looked like portholes.
Hmm.
And he says over 100 of his fellow Coast Guard members witnessed this thing making sharp 90-degree turns in the sky.
100.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of eyewitnesses. But, when we're talking about events that challenge our understanding of reality, it's important to think about how things like stress, expectation, and even just the power of suggestion can influence, perception.
So you're saying even with that many people seeing it, it could still be
Yeah.
like a case of mass misinterpretation.
It's possible. It's worth thinking about. Think about it. You're on a ship. It's the middle of the night. You're near a place known for mysterious stuff. And then, bam, something unusual shows up in the sky. I mean, that kind of situation, it can really heighten anxieties and create this environment where misperception is more likely, It wouldn't be the first time that a group of people they all misidentified something totally normal as something extraordinary.
Okay, that makes sense. Our brains are always trying to make sense of the world, sometimes even like filling in the blanks with what we think we should see. But this isn't just, blurry lights in the sky. Ron says he saw beings looking out from those portholes. He even mentions a marine science technician who was on board and managed to snap some photos.
Photos.
Yeah. Things are getting really interesting now. If there were photos, well, that could change everything, couldn't it? Physical evidence would be hard to dismiss.
Photos would certainly be compelling. However, the fact that those photos aren't here, it raises more questions than it answers, really. What happened to those pictures? Were they really confiscated, like Ron says, or is there some other explanation?
Yeah, that's a question we'll have to deal with as we dig deeper into Ron's story. He goes on to describe a pretty chilling encounter, honestly, with some Men in Black when the ship got back to port in New York.
Men in Black. Wow. Now we're getting into legend and conspiracy theory here. It's a concept that has captivated people for decades. It's fueled by popular culture and, real life accounts like what Ron's describing.
In his description, it doesn't disappoint. Matching black suits and sunglasses, robotic movements and speech, just like blank expressions. And then these chilling threats. He claims that they made the entire crew sign affidavits, denying that they saw anything, and threatened to make them disappear if they ever talked to the media about it.
Yeah.
It sounds like something right out of a sci-fi movie.
It definitely has all the typical elements of a classic Men in Black encounter. But you have to remember, these figures, they often exist, they exist in that blurry space between reality and myth.
So are you saying Ron might have actually just seen some government officials, and because of the UFO and all the stories about Men in Black, his mind, kind of embellished the whole encounter?
It's definitely a possibility. The human mind is incredibly complex, and our memories, they're not perfect, We tend to kind of weave stories around what we experience. We often unconsciously, will fill in gaps and kind of shape events so that they fit our existing beliefs and expectations.
But wouldn't 100 witnesses be, pretty convincing? How could that many people be wrong?
That's a really good point. But remember, even a big group of people can misperceive things, especially in a situation that's really charged emotionally. And the Bermuda Triangle, with its whole history of unexplained events, it might have just primed them to interpret what they saw in a specific way, you know?
That's true. The setting itself can affect how we see things. It's like our brains are like looking for patterns, for explanations, and sometimes we find them even when they aren't really there.
Exactly. We have this tendency to, like, impose order on chaos, to find meaning. I mean, even in situations that are totally ambiguous.
So where does that leave us? We've got a UFO sighting with a ton of witnesses, this scary encounter with people who sound an awful lot like the Men in Black, and then a bunch of questions about how reliable memory and, well, perception really are.
It's a fascinating puzzle, and we're just starting to put the pieces together. In the next part of our deep dive, we're going to take a closer look at Ron's account, examine the specific details and explore the psychological stuff that might be happening here. We'll also look into the whole, cultural phenomenon of the Men in Black and try to understand why they're so appealing and what role they play in the bigger UFO story. Welcome back.
So let's break down some of the things Ron said, starting with his description of the UFO. You used the word, what was it? Iridescent.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah, implying that, well, there was changing colors, and that's something we hear in a lot of UFO reports. And it makes people imagine some kind of advanced technology, something that can, manipulate light or energy or something. It really does make you think, like, is that even something we could understand with our current physics?
Yeah.
He also mentioned those bright lights and in something that looked like, well, portholes, he said. Could that just be our brains, like, trying to see familiar shapes and patterns in something totally alien,
It's a really interesting question. When we're confronted with something we don't know, our minds, well, they try to find features that we recognize, trying to categorize the unfamiliar to fit it into something we already know. But what if what Ron saw just didn't fit into any category? What if it was something truly beyond what we can comprehend?
That's where things get really, really mind-blowing. And remember, he wasn't the only one who saw this. Ron said over 100 of his crewmates saw the same thing.
100 witnesses. I mean, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the question remains, could they all have been wrong? We know that things like stress and expectation and even cultural narratives can all affect how we perceive things.
Right, like you said earlier about the Bermuda Triangle and, its reputation for strange things happening.
Yeah.
But even considering that, wouldn't it be, like, statistically unlikely for that many people to all misinterpret the same event in the exact same way?
Mm-hmm.
What are the odds that they actually all saw something truly unusual, something that can't be explained?
Well, that's the core of this whole mystery, isn't it? We have to weigh the possibilities. Think about the likelihood of mass misperception versus the possibility of something truly extraordinary happening. And this is where, the fact that those photos are missing becomes even more frustrating. If we had some physical proof, it would make this whole discussion so much easier.
It's like the missing piece. Ron says they were confiscated, but without them, all we have is his memory. And as we've talked about, memory can be unreliable, right? It would be incredible to find those photos, or even that marine scientist who supposedly took them. Do you think there's any chance of finding anything to back up Ron's story after all this time?
It would be tough, that's for sure. After all these decades trying to track down people and physical evidence is a huge challenge. People move, memories fade, and evidence gets lost or destroyed. It's one of the hardest things about investigating something that happened in the past, especially when there's, secrecy and controversy involved.
So the photos are probably a long shot. But let's move on to, another part of Ron's story that really gives me chills. Mm-hmm. The Men in Black. He said they moved and talked like robots, almost, like not human. They all wore the same black suits and sunglasses, no expressions on their faces, and their voices were, monotone. It sounds exactly like something out of, like, an old sci-fi movie.
It's an interesting comparison. We've seen these figures so many times in books and movies and shows, usually as, agents of some secret government organization. They silence witnesses and cover up proof of, alien activity. But the question is, did those fictional portrayals affect how Ron saw these guys? Did his mind, already primed by the UFO and all the mystery surrounding the Bermuda Triangle, did it shape what he saw to fit that familiar narrative?
You're saying that maybe pop culture actually influenced his memory of what happened. It's like our brains are constantly, like, pulling from a library of images and stories, and sometimes those Well, those references, they get mixed in with our real-life experiences.
That's right. Our minds are amazing at creating stories,
Yeah.
at connecting the dots and making sense of the world around us. Sometimes those stories are, accurate representations of what actually happened. But sometimes, well, sometimes they're more like creative interpretations. They're influenced by our biases, our expectations, and the stories we've absorbed over time.
So how do we figure out what's real and what's not in a situation like this? How can we tell if Ron's encounter with the Men in Black was a genuine experience, with something unknown, or if it was just his mind trying to make sense of something that was already incredibly strange?
That's the real challenge, and there's no easy answer. We can analyze what he said, consider the psychology involved, compare Ron's story to other similar stories, but in the end, there's always going to be some uncertainty, and I think that uncertainty is it's part of what keeps these stories so interesting.
It's true. There's something about the unknown, about the possibility of something out there that we just don't understand that makes us curious. It sparks our imagination. And the Men in Black, with their mystery and menace, they represent that unknown in a way is just so compelling. But Ron's story doesn't stop there. He claims they forced him and his crewmates to sign those affidavits denying what they saw and threatened them with serious consequences if they talked about it.
That's a very disturbing detail. If that's true, it suggests that someone was trying to, suppress information, trying to control what people knew about what happened. It plays into those fears we have about the government, about them keeping secrets and, potentially abusing their power.
It makes you wonder if they went to such lengths to silence these guys.
Yeah.
What were they so afraid of? What was so important to keep secret?
Those are questions that they've fueled conspiracy theories for years, and we may never know the whole truth. But exploring those questions, looking at the evidence and the psychology, can help us understand more about how we see the world and the stories we tell ourselves about it.
So after looking at Ron's account and considering all the psychological aspects and the influence of, popular culture, where does that leave us? We've seen how memory can be unreliable, how our minds try to fill in the gaps and create stories. But we've also thought about the possibility that, maybe there's more to this than we initially thought.
Exactly. We've explored the idea that it could be misperception, but we haven't ruled out that Ron and his crewmates might have witnessed something genuinely unexplained. And I think that's what keeps us coming back to these stories, that possibility of something more out there, something beyond our current understanding.
That's a great point. We've been really focused on Ron's story and the specifics of what happened to him. But in the final part of our deep dive, I think it's time to zoom out a little, to look at the bigger picture. Let's explore the whole context of UFO sightings, government secrecy, and this enduring fascination with the Men in Black. We'll look at different theories, analyze some historical trends, and think about what it all means for how we understand the universe and our place in it. Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive. We spent a lot of time with Ron's story, that UFO encounter and the whole Men in Black thing.
We've really gone deep into the psychology of perception, the power of suggestion and how cultural narratives can influence our experiences.
Yeah, and now it's time to, I think, step back and, look at the bigger picture.
Let's dive into the whole context of UFO sightings, government secrecy, and this enduring fascination people have with these unexplained events.
Exactly. People have been reporting UFOs for decades now, all over the world. What is it about these stories that keeps us so captivated? Why do we keep looking up at the sky, searching for something, beyond ourselves?
It probably has to do with this fundamental human need to explore, to question, to push the limits of what we know, what we understand. I mean, the universe is huge, it's mysterious, and the idea that we might not be alone, it's both exciting and honestly kind of scary.
Yeah, it's like this primal curiosity mixed with some good old-fashioned existential dread.
Right, exactly. We want knowledge, but we're also afraid of the unknown. And UFO sightings, I mean, they're so ambiguous, there are no clear answers, and I think they tap into both of those impulses.
They're like the ultimate mystery. It's a puzzle we might never solve.
Yeah.
But let's try to at least, sort some of the pieces. What are the main theories about UFOs? Are we talking like misidentified airplanes or weather stuff or secret government projects? Or could they actually be, alien spacecraft?
Well, there are a ton of explanations out there from the totally ordinary to truly extraordinary. Some UFO sightings can be chalked up to people mistaking things, like weather balloons, satellites, or even airplanes reflecting sunlight in weird ways.
So sometimes it really is just a case of, like, mistaken identity.
Oh, absolutely. Our brains are designed to find patterns and make sense of things, but that same tendency can lead us to see things that aren't there, especially when we're looking at, unusual things in the sky.
Okay, that explains some sightings, but what about the ones that, the ones that just can't be explained conventionally? The ones that move in strange ways or have characteristics that don't match any known aircraft or natural phenomena?
That's where it gets really interesting. Some people believe that some of these UFO sightings could be examples of super advanced technology, maybe from secret military projects or even, from other countries.
So we're talking about secret government projects, experimental aircraft, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the possibility that some of these UFOs are actually, alien spacecraft. It's the theory that really captures the imagination, but it's also the one with the least amount of hard evidence.
The holy grail of ufology.
Yeah, you could say that. It's important to acknowledge that, well, even after decades of research and investigation, there's still no definitive proof that we've been visited by extraterrestrials. There have been lots of compelling stories and intriguing bits of evidence, but nothing that's been, conclusive enough to convince the scientific community as a whole.
So the debate goes on. But even without absolute proof, the idea of aliens visiting Earth is, well, it's a powerful idea. It raises questions about our place in the universe, what we're capable of technologically, and the possibility of actually making contact with other intelligent beings.
It really challenges those assumptions we have about what's possible and forces us to confront the vastness of what we don't know. And I think that's a big part of the appeal. UFOs represent something outside the ordinary, a glimpse into a reality that's bigger than what we experience every day.
It's like a doorway to the imagination, a portal to endless possibilities. And the Men in Black, they're so mysterious, so connected to this idea of government secrecy. They just add another layer of intrigue to the whole thing.
They really do. They embody those anxieties we have about what we don't understand, those fears of powerful forces that are beyond our control. They represent this possibility that something's being hidden from us,
Yeah.
that there's more to the story than we're being told.
Yeah, it's like a conspiracy theory come to life. This shadowy figure that steps out of the darkness to enforce a veil of secrecy.
And Ron's story, with all that talk about intimidation and being forced to stay quiet, it plays right into those fears. It reinforces the whole narrative of a government cover-up, of this deliberate effort to keep information about UFOs and alien contact under wraps.
It's a scary thought, but we have to remember that these are just theories, just interpretations based on limited information and personal experiences. We need to approach these stories with a healthy dose of skepticism, but also be open to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there's more to the universe than we realize.
I agree. It's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
between critical thinking and open-mindedness, acknowledging the limits of what we know, but also being open to the possibility of new discoveries.
So after diving deep into all of this, the UFO sightings, the Men in Black encounters, the government secrecy, and all the psychology of belief, what can we say for sure?
Honestly, I think the most honest answer is, well, we can't say for sure. The evidence is still out there. There are different ways to interpret it. And the truth, whatever that truth is, it's still a mystery.
But even without clear-cut answers, I think this exploration has been, it's been valuable. We examined a first-hand account, we dug into the psychology of how we perceive things, and we looked at the wider context of UFO sightings and government secrecy.
We explored the history, analyzed different viewpoints and theories, and hopefully we've encouraged you to think for yourself and be a little more critical of the world around you.
Exactly. Maybe this deep dive has piqued your own curiosity. Maybe you'll start, looking at the night sky a bit differently, questioning those official explanations, or even, researching UFO sightings and government cover-ups on your own.
The most important thing is to keep an open mind. Question what you think you know, and never stop searching for knowledge and understanding.
Because even if we never definitively crack the code of the universe's mysteries, the journey of exploration is its own reward,
And who knows, maybe someday we'll finally have those answers, the answers we've been looking for all along.
Until then, keep your eyes on the sky and your mind open to all the possibilities. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.